Hi everyone, and welcome to First Chapter Fridays. My name is Abbey and I'm the tween librarian at the Brookline Library. And today we are going to be reading the first chapter of Neal Shusterman's The Schwa Was Here. And this is one of Neal Shusterman's early books. It's one that I read when I was a kid, and it's been one of my favorite ones ever since. And he's just gotten kind of bigger and bigger since then, so I thought it might be fun to go back and kind of explore one of his early works. And this book is kind of a contemporary realism, kind of vaguely magical realism book about a boy named Antsy who meets another boy named Calvin Schwa, who there's something like a little weird about Calvin, and they call it kind of functionally invisible. Calvin is not invisible, but people tend not to notice him when he's sitting in a classroom. People don't see that he's there, and so they're wondering if he's actually invisible or if there's something else going on, and kind of start doing experiments to find out the extent of Calvin's invisibility. All right, so the schwa was here. Schwa, this is the definition. The faint vowel sound in many unstressed syllables in the English language. It is signified by the pronunciation and represented by the symbol upside down E. For example, the E in overlook, the A in unforgettable, and the O in run-of-the-mill. It is the most common vowel sound in the English language. All right, chapter 1. Manny Bullpucky gets his sorry butt hurled off the Marine Park Bridge. I don't really remember when I first met the Schwa. He was just kind of always there, like the killer potholes in Avenue U or the Afghans barking at the windows above Crawley's restaurant. A whole truckload of them, if you believe the rumors. Old Man Crawley, by the way, was a certifiable Looney Tune, a shut-in like Brooklyn's own Howard Hughes, almost as legendary as the lobsters served up in his restaurant below. See, there was the staircase that went up from the restaurant to the residence on the second floor, but with each step it got darker around you, so when you tried to climb it, you kept thinking you heard the horror audience behind you yelling, "No, don't go up the stairs!" Because who but a moron would go up to search for Old Man Crawley, who had fingernails like Jinsu knives that could dice, slice, and julienne you, then serve you up like 14,000 plastic dog bowls. Those bowls, by the way, would probably be made by my father, the vice president of product development for Fisher Plastic Products. If you're a guy, I'm sure you already know that their most famous product is that little plastic strainer at the bottom of urinals, and you probably still laugh every time you look down while taking a leak and see Fisher written in happy bold letters, like maybe it was to remind you what you were standing there doing. But what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the Schwa. See, that was the whole point with the Schwa. You couldn't even think about him without losing track of your own thoughts, like even in your head he was somehow becoming invisible. Okay, so like I said, I don't remember when I first met him. Nobody does. But I can tell you the first time I remembered actually noticing him, and it was the day Manny Bullpucky jumped from the Marine Park Bridge. It was a Saturday, and my friends and I were bored, as usual. I was hanging out with Howie Bogerton, whose one life goal was not to have any goals in life, and Ira Goldfarb, who was a self-proclaimed cinematic genius. With a digital video camera his grandparents had bought him for his bar mitzvah last year, Ira was determined to be Steven Spielberg by the time he got to high school. As for Manny Bullpucky, we kind of dragged him along with us to various places we went. We had to drag him around on account of he was a dummy. Not a dummy like Wendell Tigger, who had to repeat fifth grade like 14,000 times, but like a real dummy. More snooty people might call him a mannequin or even a prosthetic personage, but nobody calls things what they really are anymore. But to us normal people in Garrison Beach, Brooklyn, he was a dummy, plain and simple. As for his name, it came in the natural course of human events. Dad had brought him home from work one day. "Look at this guy," he said proudly, holding it up by the scruff of his neck. He's made of a new ultra-high-grade lightweight plastic, completely unbreakable. My older brother Frank looked up from his dinner. "Bullpucky," he says, although I'm editing out the bad word here on account of my mother might read this, and I don't like the taste of soap. As soon as Frankie says it, Mom, without missing a beat, hauls off and whacks him on the head in her own special way, starting low and swinging up like a tennis player giving a ball topspin, just grazing the thin spot on his head that's going to be bald someday, probably from Mom slapping him there. "You watch your mouth," Mama says. Mouth, not mouth. We got a problem here with the TH sound? It's not just us, it's all of Brooklyn, maybe Queens too. My English teacher says I also drop vowels like a bad juggler and have an infuriating tense problem, whatever that meant. So anyway, if you put the TH problem and the vowel thing together, our family's Catholic instead of Catholic. My name's Antony instead of Anthony. Somehow, that got changed to Ancy when I was little, and they've called me Ancy ever since. It don't bother me no more. Used to it, you know. You grow into your name. Anyway, Dad tossed me the dummy. Here, take it, he says. What are you giving it to me for? What do you think? I want you to break it. I thought you said it was unbreakable. Yeah, and you're the test, capiche? I smiled, proud to figure in my father's product development job. That was the first time in recorded history that either of my parents had singled me out to do anything. Do I get to break something? My little sister Christina asks. Yeah, says Dad. Wait a few years and you'll be breaking hearts. Christina must have liked the sound of that, because she flips open the journal she's practically glued to her hand and makes a note of it. So Howie, Ira, and me, we started doing unpleasant things to Manny that might break him. Ira loves this, because he can get the whole thing on film. We rode our bikes down Flatbush Avenue to the Marine Park Bridge, which is no easy task considering I gotta carry Manny on my handlebars. God forbid Frankie, who just got his license, could give us a ride in the old Toyota he just got. No, he's too busy hanging out with all the other perfect people. But don't get me started on Frankie. We got to the bridge, and the three of us, not including Manny, worked out our game plan. I should go down to the rocks to film, Ira said. I'll get a good view of him falling from there. Nah, says Howie. Let's go to the middle of the bridge. I want to see him hit the water. If he hits the water, I remind him, we won't get him back. Howie shrugs. There's a lot of boats going by. Maybe we can time it so he hits a boat. We still won't get him back, I said, and we might sink the boat. That'd look good on film, Ira says. Now all this time, I got this creepy feeling like we're being watched. But then, of course, we are being watched. Everybody driving by has got to be wondering what we're doing standing with a dummy by the guardrail of the bridge. But this feeling is more than that. Anyway, I ignore the feeling because we have important business here. We'll drop him on the rocks, I told them. Yeah, says Howie. Maximum breakage potential. Great. Howie, you stay up here on the bridge to push him over. Ira and me will go down and watch. We climbed down to the rocks and looked up to where Howie stood holding Manny by the scruff of the neck. It's a pretty high drop. I didn't envy Manny. Still, that feeling of being watched just won't go away. Should I push him or should I throw him? Howie asks. Do what comes naturally, I yelled back. I don't know, he says. This is a very unnatural thing. Rolling, says Ira, and action. Howie backs up for a second, and a moment later, Manny Bullpucky comes hurtling over the side of the bridge, arms and legs flailing like he's really alive, and he does a swan dive head first toward the rocks. Wham! He hit the jagged boulders, and it's all over for him. His bald head goes flying like a cannonball straight at me. I hit the deck, narrowly missing being decapitated, and when I get up again, a headless mannequin lies with his arms strewn on the rocks, just another casualty of the fast life. Howie comes running down from the bridge. What happened? Did he break? Did he break? Yeah, I told him, picking myself off the ground. We're gonna have to change his name to Headless Joe. Ira, still behind the camera, moved in close to the body, pausing dramatically, and finally stopped filming. Where'd his head go? I shrugged. I don't know, over there somewhere. So much for unbreakable plastic. Are you looking for this? I heard another voice say. The voice was scratchy, like a kid who screamed a little too much. I turned, and I swear to you, the first thing I see is Manny's mannequin head floating in midair. I only see it for a split second, but it's the creepiest thing. Then in that split second, my brain does a quick retake, and I see that there's a kid holding the head under his armpit. I couldn't really see the kid at first on account of his clothes are kind of a brownish gray, like the rocks around him. You know how your mind can play tricks on you when the light is just right. Excuse me, said Ira. This is a closed set. The kid ignored him. That was pretty cool, he said. You should have dressed him up, though, so when he fell he looked like a person and not a dummy on film. Ira pursed his lips and got a little red, annoyed that he didn't think of it. Don't I know you? I asked the kid. I took a good look at him. His hair was kind of ashen blonde, real wispy, like if you held a magnetized balloon over his head, all his hair would stand on end. He was about a head shorter than me, a little too thin. Other than that, there was nothing remarkable about him, nothing at all. He wasn't good-looking, he wasn't ugly, he wasn't buff, and he wasn't scrawny. He was just, like, average. Like, if you looked up kid in the dictionary, his face would be there. I'm in some class with you, right? I asked him. Science, he said. I sit next to you in science class. Yeah, that's right, now I remember. Although for the life of me, I have no memory of him sitting next to me. I'm Calvin, he said. Calvin Schwa. With that, Ira gasped. You're the kid they call the Schwa? Yeah, I guess. Ira took a step back. I'm Anthony Bonanno, I told him, but everyone calls me Ancy. These are my friends Howie and Ira. Then I pointed to the head in his hands. You already met Manny. He took Manny's head away back to his body. So what's all this for, anyway? Fisher Plastics product stress test, I told him, trying to sound professional. Manny gets an F, Howie said. He's supposed to be unbreakable. Technology fails again, I said, all the while noticing how Eric still kept his distance from the Schwa, as if he were radioactive, like some sort of the flounder they found off Carnacy Pier. The Schwa knelt down to Manny's headless body. Technically, he's not broken, the Schwa said. If your head comes off, you're broken, said Howie. Trust me. See, look here, he pointed to the neck. His head is held on by a ball and socket joint. It's popped off, watch. Then the Schwa snapped Manny's head back on as if it were a giant Barbie. I was both relieved and disappointed. It was good to know my dad's work was successful, but upsetting to know that I couldn't destroy it. So what are we going to do with him next? Howie asked. Pyrotechnics, said Ira. We try to blow him up. Can I come too? Asked the Schwa. Yeah, sure, why not? I turned to him, but he's gone. Hey, where'd you go? I'm right here. I squinted to get the sun out of my eyes, and I saw him. He's waving his hands like trying to get my attention or something. I don't know, said Ira. You know what they say about too many cooks? No, what? Asks Howie. You know, too many cooks stink up the kitchen. Howie still looks confused. What? Don't those cooks know how to wear deodorant? It's an expression, Howie, I explained. Howie, you gotta understand, ain't dumb. He just doesn't think out of the box. Of course, if I told him that, he'd wonder what box I was talking about. He's the kind of guy who's hardwired to take everything literally, which is why he's so good at math and science, but when it comes to anything creative, he tanks. He's about as creative as a barcode. Even when he was little, he would do real good at coloring when there were nice thick black lines in the coloring book, but give him some crayons and a blank page and his forehead would start to bleed. So anyway, by a 2-to-1 vote, the Schwa is allowed to join us in our next attempt to bust Manny. Ira voted no, but he wouldn't look any of us when he did. So what's up with you? I asked him. It's my opinion. I get to have an opinion. Okay, don't get so touchy. With Ira suddenly unsociable, the Schwa decided to leave rather than make any further waves. See you in science, he said. Only after he's gone does Ira pull me aside and say, I wish I would have gotten that on film. Gotten what on film? Remember a second ago when you asked the Schwa where he went and he practically had to jump up and down to get your attention? Yeah, he was standing right in front of you all along. I waved my hand like I'm shooing away a fly. What are you talking about? He moved behind me. That's why I couldn't see him. But Howie shook his head. He never moved, Nancy. I scowled at them like this is some conspiracy to make me look stupid. I've heard things about him too, Ira said. Crazy stuff. Such as? Ira came in close enough so I could smell last night's garlic whatever on his breath. His eyes, Ira whispered. They say his eyes change color to match the sky. They say his shoes are always the same color as the ground. They say if you stare at him long enough, you can read what's written on the wall behind him. That's called persistence of vision, Howie says, reminding us that behind his veil of idiocy, he is a keen, analytical mind. That's where your brain fills in gaps of what it thinks ought to be there. It's not a gap, I reminded him. He's a kid. He's a freak, said Ira. 10-foot pole material. Well, I didn't know Howie and Ira, but I've spent enough of my life keeping weird things at a 10-foot pole distance. If any of this is true, I told them, there are ways of finding out. All right, and so that was the first chapter of Neal Shusterman's The Schwa Was Here. And if you liked what you heard today, you can find this book available as an ebook and audiobook on Libby. All right, thank you.